IK Multimedia's Tonex platform gives us a lot of great tools to be able to tweak our tone models to make sure that they're exactly what we want and we're getting the tones that we need to hear coming back from whether we're using Tonex software or Tonex pedal. Today I want to talk about one feature in there that some folks maybe might dismiss, maybe not use because they think they don't need to. And again, I put need in quotes. We need to do whatever we have to do to get the results we want. But maybe a lot of folks just think I don't need this. What am I talking about? I am talking about the reverb parameter. The reverb parameter can really be a make or break addition to a tone. So we're going to discuss that a little bit today. I'm going to be using a couple new tone model bundles that I have available on my website as a demo today also. I'll let you hear these in the mix a little bit later on. I've had a lot of requests from folks to do direct captures. So I released some tone model bundles and some free ToneNet presets and free presets on my site as well. And the links to those are below, where I captured an amp and a cab. And some of those bundles I did put direct captures, but more and more folks are really asking for direct captures. Why? Well, some folks feel that the use of a direct capture with a cab or impulse response is giving a more accurate representation of that amp. Whether that's true or not is open to debate, and that's not the purpose of this video. But a lot of folks have asked for the direct captures. These turned out fabulous. I always include in the preset a baked-in custom impulse response, so you do have something that sounds great out of the box. But then we can rest assured that if we switch the cab out, we are going to get something that is going to be a very pure tone of just that amp that was captured without the software having to remove what it feels is the cab portion. So again, I'm not here to debate whether one is more accurate, but the results of these are great and I really like them. And for the folks who do want direct captures, these are available. So I have two. I have the Brit 800 DI Ultimate Tone Model Bundle and I have the Plexi DI Ultimate Tone Model Bundle. And these are based off of my Marshall Studio series, the Studio Classic and Studio Vintage. So basically a mini JCM 800 and a mini Plexi. And those are available. They'll be at the links below. You'll hear the tones today and you'll hear a couple full mixes utilizing these tones with no other processing, utilizing also the topic of today's video, that reverb parameter. So without further ado, let's dive over to Cubase with Tonex within it. And we're going to take a look at this reverb parameter and discuss it a little further. All right, so here we are over in Tonex within Cubase. This is the plugin version. So we have this tone model. This is, like I mentioned, from my Brit 800 DI Alt 2. I do have a custom impulse response of a Celestion Custom 90 speaker that was mic'd with a Bayer M160 mic. This has a little bit of a thinner tone, but works really nice in the mix. But obviously we can swap that out too. All right, that's what that sounds like. You'll notice here on these, I always have numbers, and these are just progressively getting gainier or more gain on them. All right, we'll take a look closer at those tones in a short while. Let's go back to the Alt 2 here. Good tone to just mess with right now. Now you'll notice we have this reverb function. Now that's obviously, if we go to the tone models, when we capture a tone model, it does not capture any reverb. And this is where a point of confusion might be. When we take an actual amplifier in a room, mic it up, we are going to, whether we like it or not, capture some of the reverb room reflections from the room we're in. There's nothing we can really do about that. We can treat our room, dampen our room. We can try to surround our microphones with different damping material. And some of those have varying results depending on how we implement them. And they're perfectly fine if we're getting the results we want. That's what it's always about. I'm not here to tell you whether you should or shouldn't do something, just giving you ideas, and you have to make the final decision what's going to work for you. But whether we like it or not, when we play a guitar into an amplifier in a room with a microphone on it, we are going to pick up some sort of room reflections. It's not going to be a direct sound. How does that compare to something like a modeled tone model that Tonex picks up? We say, well, I mic'd the cab in the room, I should still get that. We don't get any of that. The Tonex tone models do not pick up any room ambience or reverb from the room. So what does that cause? Well, there's a couple situations here. Let's say we were taking a tone model and playing it back through an FR cab in the same room. Well, we're probably not going to miss out on the feel of that reverb because now we're going to be hearing those room reflections because we're still playing in that room. but that's just hitting our ear at that moment in time. That's not being recorded. Now, if we had a different situation where we're playing with Tonex pedal with just a set of headphones plugged into it, we're not going to be hearing any reverb from the room. We're going to be hearing an extremely dry signal, and that's where the problem arises. Another scenario, maybe we're recording and we record that tone model to tape, shall we say, or onto our DAW. That recorded tone model is going to be bone dry. So that's the difference. We're not going to have any sort of this naturally occurring reverb on any of these tone models. And that sometimes can be the reason some folks may listen and go, this doesn't sound really realistic. It doesn't sound like my amp did in the room, let's say. And I'm not saying that this is the solution to capturing this elusive amp in the room sound, but it just is one aspect that could possibly be why we're not happy with the way it sounds. If we are comparing a recording of a tone model we captured versus the real amp that we captured, recorded, we're going to hear some of that room ambience and reverb on the real track that won't be on the tone model track. So this could be nothing, or it could be something very major. So if we're playing on headphones, I definitely think the use of reverb is going to make our experience quite a bit more enjoyable and maybe a little bit more realistic. Or if we're capturing our recorded tone models down to tape or into our DAW, we probably would want to add a little bit of reverb to help it sit in the mix because it won't be so bone dry. It'll be more like, depending on how we use it, the real recorded amp in the room with a mic on it, maybe picking up some of this room ambience and reverb. So how can we use this reverb? Well, if I turn this off, and again, if we're listening on headphones here, this is going to be a lot more apparent. But if I play this, that's being captured down to my DAW bone dry. I'm not getting any of this natural room reverb. In my experience, that tends to give the tone a bit more hardness to it, shall we say. It doesn't soften it up. A lot of reverb will tend to soften a tone up. So we turn this reverb on. Now, a lot of folks say, well, I don't play with reverb, I play metal, or I don't like the sound of reverb. Sometimes we use reverb as a very apparent effect. We want a big wash of reverb over our sound, and that really helps to pull a track back in the mix and whatnot. But that's not what I'm really talking about here. I'm talking about getting a reverb that just creates a little more realism in comparison to that real amp mic'd in a room. So what I'm doing here with the reverb, if we look, we have a lot of options here. We have a spring reverb inside of Tonex. Let me just bring the mix up so we can hear the effects of each reverb. Spring 2. So different characters to that reverb. Spring 3 has a little bit more of that springiness to it. We have a plate reverb. Much more splashy and kind of metallic sounding. We can also take the color control, tame some of that high end on the splashiness, or make it more apparent. But let's just leave that at 0 now. And we also have a room reverb, which is going to be the one that's most like sitting in the room. That's why it's called a room reverb. Now we can adjust the time so that we get a longer decay. We can adjust the pre-delay so that the delay doesn't actually kick in until a certain amount of time after we strike the note. That's quite dramatic, but that helps so that if we have a big reverb, it doesn't engulf our first note. Almost like a delay sound, versus if I have this down, you'll hear that reverb will happen immediately after I hit the note. I usually like to set that somewhere around maybe 10 or 20. Just give that note a little bit of space before it starts. Now, these are extreme settings. Where do I like to start with these? I usually have my time on my room setting in and around 3, and I bring my mix down somewhere around 25, even 20 if I want it to be more subtle. If I turn that reverb off, if I want it to be a little more apparent, maybe 25 to 30. Now you could say, let's go a little shorter, a little bit less on our mix. Could also darken it up. So my settings that I kind of prefer are the color on 0, can be tweaked, pre-delay maybe on 20, maybe 2.5 to 3 on the time, and 25 to 30 on the mix. This is not an overt reverb. This is just trying to mimic maybe the effect of hearing what that amp would sound like actually mic'd in a room, where we have a little bit of this room ambience or room reverb added onto it. So I think some folks, if they get used to adding this in very subtly on the room setting, it can go a long way to taking a tone model that we may feel is just not quite right and making it very right and exactly what we're looking for, and maybe softening it a little bit and giving it a little bit more realism. Okay, so on to these tone model bundles that I have out now at the links below. If you want to grab them, help support my channel, I do appreciate that greatly. The Brit 800 Di has 6 tone models, which are going to, in the preset, include this custom IR of a Celestion Custom 90 speaker mic'd with a Bayer M160 ribbon mic, and these are going to sound like this. Here's the cleanest setting. Moving up from there, we move up to the next gain setting. We go up again. Again up. Moving up again. I'm playing my Gibson SG on its bridge pickup. And finally, the highest gain setting. Now, the neat thing about that is we can really tweak this because we know we've got a very accurate direct capture of that amp. So if we came into, let's say, our VIR cabinets on Tonex and grab something like this 412, what I believe is a greenback, maybe mess around with the mics a little bit. I'll grab a combination of a 121 and a 57, pull this back a little bit, maybe mix it a little more towards the 121. And then we have this. May say that has a little too much punch and bottom from the ribbon mic. And by adding that in, we can really come up with different flavors that sound amazing. So I'm really happy with those. The link is below if you want to grab those. The other ones I did were the Plexi DI Alt. What this bundle is going to contain is 9 different tone metals. Again, we have push 1 all the way up to push 3, but I've captured them on the high channel, the normal channel, and then the 2 channels jump together. So here's what we get. This is with a custom IR attached to it of my Rev 212 cabinet with vintage 30s mic'd with a Cascade Fathead ribbon mic, and I love this IR. So here is kind of the lowest gain setting on, let's go to the normal channel. The high channel. And the channels jump together. Moving on to the second gain level on the normal channel. A little warmer and bigger and beefier sounding. To the high channel. The 2 channels jump together. Moving on to the last gain level, normal channel. And finally to the jump channel with that higher gain setting. All right, so that's the way that those tones sound, utilizing this little technique of the reverb settings that I was showing to add a little more realism. Now, how does all of that sound in the mix? Now, to play these mixes is both to showcase these two tone model bundles, but also to show you, without any other post-processing in the mix, I'm just using these tone models as they sound there, as they were captured with the IRs you heard, with this little bit of reverb in the mix, and you'll see that I think you'll agree that they work really nicely in the mix, have a lot of realism to them, and just blend quite nicely with a lot less work. So give those a listen. All right, so what did you guys think? I hope you enjoyed those tones. If you do, they are available at my website at the links below. My link to ToneNet is also available, where I have a selection of free tone model downloads. Give me a follow over there. Give me some thumbs ups. That's always appreciated. If you do want to grab some tone model bundles, I have the links below to my website. It helps me to keep doing these educational videos that so many folks have told me are helping them immensely, and it helps to support my channel and let me keep doing these videos that I hope you are getting some use out of. So please like the video, share it with anybody you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watching it. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.